Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to get to today, and I'm so happy that you're able to join us. Look, folks, let's talk a little bit about what's going on with the Supreme Court, how they have a new case that may just completely change how we go on the internet. We'll have a conversation about it. Also, we got to talk about healing from trauma and how we have a trauma specialist to give us some insight on what we can do to get past our pain. And of course, we got to talk about this whole controversy around Jonathan Majors and Rihanna's magazine covers as it looks at how we redefine Black men, masculinity and femininity. So we got a lot to get to. Stay with us. It's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in. First and foremost, happy Wednesday, folks. Happy Wednesday. So happy to join us. Oh, man, big shout out to the crew. We're going to get into some great conversations. So get ready to throw y'all comments into the chat as we have these big discussions. But you know how we do on Wednesdays. We go in on Wednesdays. And so I'm very excited to have my partner on Wednesdays, my sister. She is an attorney. She is also the TV host. She hosts her own show called Suzette Speaks on YouTube. And I'm always happy to have her join me for these big conversations on Wednesday to get me through my week. My sister, Suzette Speaks. Suzette, good afternoon. How you feeling?
Hey, Culture Crew. Hey, Farajii. Thanks for having me. Always good to be here on Wednesdays. Really enjoying it. So I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
Absolutely. All right, so we had to bring you in, especially I had to have you to kind of get your take and insight on this first story, which is around the big case that the Supreme Court is actually trying to review. This is a case that many people probably don't even know is happening, but this is a case that really gets to the heart of how if certain sites, certain social media platforms, should they be held responsible for people's actions, especially when they have, when they posting something that is, hate oriented, when they posting something of violence and something actually happens in real life, in real time, should these social media and so should these, search engines and other websites be responsible? So this is a case that is rooted in this one law called the Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. And folks, I want to share this with you very quickly.
I think Farajii has had some technical difficulties, but I will continue with this conversation just so we have some of the groundwork on what exactly is going on right now at the Supreme Court. Now, the baseline is there is a young lady's family who has brought a case before the Supreme Court based on her being killed during the terrorist attack that took place in Paris in 2015. Now, during that attack, unfortunately, some Al-Qaeda operatives took over the city, and basically she was the one American, unfortunately, that was killed at that time. So these individuals that were charged were found guilty in a court of law in France. But however, the family has now brought a case before the U.S. Supreme Court in order to see if internet platforms such as YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, etc., will now be held liable, not only because this act, Section 230, has protected them for the last 25 years, it has given them free reign to just serve as a host. Well, the family is arguing that the internet providers, the social media platforms, are actually making recommendations, and it's the recommendations piece that they are bringing forward to argue that, unfortunately, these Al-Qaeda operatives were actually radicalized by what was recommended to them vis-a-vis an algorithm by these platforms. So their main argument is that Section 230 is silent about recommendations, right? Because the internet has evolved so much since 1996 when this law came into being. And this law has never been amended or edited since. So this is the first time the Supreme Court is taking up this piece of legislation. And it's going to be interesting to see if they now create an opportunity for people to hold these social media platforms responsible for what they recommend and publish. That's the key. Hey, Farajii, come on through.
Hey, there we go. Look, just a little power outage on this end, but we're all good now. But you're absolutely right. Hold these social media spaces responsible. Now, here's my big question for you, Suzette. In terms of legal, because it's a legal matter, right? They're really, and make sure, I want to get this clear for our watchers, for our crew. There aren't a lot of laws on the books, as far as we know, to really, quote unquote, regulate social media, to regulate the internet, outside of this big piece of Section 230, where this is about how we interact on these spaces. But I'm saying there aren't laws like to penalize websites, social media sites, and other platforms online if they consider to kind of step out of bounds, if they add to something, right? Am I clear on that?
This is the major, basically, people will call this colloquially the law that created the internet, right? The internet, the way we know it right now, as free speech, where no host of information has ever been liable for what some user has published. Now, the family is asking the court to consider recommendations by these social media platforms as a form of publication, that they are in fact promoting to you now speech that is violent, that they knowingly, and that's the question actually it will hinge upon, whether they know that speech exists, because remember, there are hundreds of millions of publications every single day on each of these platforms. Will they now have to do the work in terms of understanding what can be deemed dangerous, what is defamatory, what is false, and ultimately, will they now be responsible for recommending said, dangerous, violent, false articles, or whatever means that the person publishes, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on Facebook, any of them, if they are now going to now be held to a higher standard in terms of limiting what can be placed on their platform.
Absolutely. I want to share with folks what has been already reported about this whole case, folks. And again, you may not hear about this. This is not mainstream. It's mainstream because the New York Times have talked about it, but it's not to the forefront of our psyches. And here's what the New York Times reported about this piece. Take a look at this, that the federal law at issue in the case, Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, shields online platforms from lawsuits over what their users post and the platform's decision to take content down. Limiting the sweep of the law could expose the platforms to lawsuits claiming they had steered people to post in videos that promote extremism, advocate violence, harm reputations, and cause emotional distress. The case comes as developments in cutting-edge artificial intelligence products raise profound new questions about whether old laws, Section 230 was enacted in 96, can keep up with rapidly changing technology. And just in that piece, Suzette, I'm thinking of a couple of different platforms. I'm thinking of Twitter, what happened with Donald Trump and how that whole situation went down. I'm thinking of YouTube, and how, if you start to look at one video, the recommended videos start to come up on the screen as well. And that way you can go further on. I mean, all of these platforms, are kind of in this position where we do have to ask our culture. And this is also, there's like a double-edged sword, because as much as we want to be critical of these platforms, people are making monies off these platforms. Folks are sharing real valuable information, like you on your show, my show here, of course, Black Star Network, we're digital space. So it's like you want to make sure that you keep the crazies out and keep the crazies off, but you don't want to destroy the platform, or you don't want to make it to the point where we're kind of going into a whole different space, which is what you see in some other countries where the government oversees social media.
Absolutely.
And not independent companies.
Absolutely, Farajii. I'm so happy we're having the discussion because it has this type of far-reaching implication. This is revolutionary in terms of if the justices side with the Gonzalez family. Now, if we are thinking about what the social media companies are arguing, it's kind of similar to what you're bringing up in the interest of free speech. We would not have the same internet at all. And what Google, who is the defendant in the case, is arguing is that this experience called the internet is a curated experience, which is you would have a totally different user kind of interface where random things would come to you. It basically would ruin the experience, and it may quell the free speech interest of why the internet exists in the first place, which is to share unbridled information. But we know with that open door, it has allowed, people who have also had nefarious causes to also have full expression and recruit and train and basically become quite popularized through these platforms. So the Gonzalez's are trying to get the Supreme Court to open the courthouse door to others who have been injured by what they argue is the curation. No, you stop becoming just a host when you start recommending to people, and unfortunately what you're recommending to them oftentimes is untrue, is violent in nature, and you can stop it. You in fact should know about this and should stop it. So it really would change the face of the internet as we know it.
We got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we'll continue the conversation. Of course, crew, I want to hear your take on this. I'm going to share with you what a little bit of the justices had to say around this issue, because guess what? There's no precedent. There is no reference point as to how the justices should move forward. I'm going to share with you where they start to even realize that the big mountain that they have to climb in dealing with this issue. So we're going to just get further into the conversation. I want to hear from you. Post your comments and stay with us. We got more conversation for you right here on The Culture, here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about the Supreme Court case that may redefine how we go online. This is the case of Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, where it's being argued that social media platforms should be held accountable, at least liable, for some of the posts and how they take the post down and the impact that it has on the larger culture and the society. This is a case that gets to the heart of how we go online and interact and engage with one another. And it also gets to the heart about freedom of speech online. So this is a very, very historic case that the Supreme Court themselves, the justices themselves say might be something that they don't have a full understanding of, that may be something that they really need to look at more. I want to bring in our sister who is Suzette Speaks, who's an attorney out of Florida, as well as a TV host. And I'm saying that because, Suzette, the Supreme Court, they were like kind of making jokes throughout. I mean, according to the reports, they were just like, I think, and I forgot which justice said it, but she made the point, like, you're not talking to experts of technology here. We're not non-experts of technology. Like, this is kind of like out of the realm of what we normally have to consider. But there was a quote that I thought just kind of spoke volumes about where we are in this whole situation. And it was a quote that was made by Justice Kagan. She said, in speaking about Section 230, she said this was a pre-algorithm statute in a post-algorithm world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we're talking about a statute that was created in 1996 around decency and how we communicate. 1996, folks, if you were born in 1996, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're almost literally 30 years, we're 3 years shy of when that statute was created. And it still serves as the guidance point for how we interact online. But look at how far technology has gone since 96 to 2023. Look at what has happened. Look at the impact, the influence. We got to look at, of course, what happened with January the 6th. We got to look at what has happened in other parts of the world with TikTok, Twitter, and other social media platforms have played pivotal roles in creating, and starting wars, creating rebellions in some places, revolutions in others. I mean, there has been a totally different change. What do you think the Supreme Court is going to do with this?
Well, it's difficult to say, Farajii. First and foremost, it shows that they're interested in taking up the issue, the fact that they accepted the case in the first place, because the Supreme Court can pick and choose which cases it allows to come before it.
That's very true.
I think also what they may have to do, and it's hard to say, but just taking an educated guess, I would say they might come up with some sort of rule-based tests, a standard for a case-by-case basis if they do open the door. So if they rule in favor of the plaintiff, which is the Gonzalez family, to say, yes, there is some sort of responsibility to which each of these social media platforms does owe the user who is harmed by a recommendation they have made. However, I think it would be a very stringent test, which is they should have, known or had reasonably known about it, known that it was violent, seen a history of violence from that particular user or publisher, given the publisher warning, et cetera, et cetera. I think it has to have kind of a rules-based test of some sort if they do side with the plaintiffs. But it is very interesting, as they said, uncharted territory for them who are not, as they said, tech experts. So it's hard to know what the outcome will be. But if it's in favor of the plaintiff, maybe there'll be some kind of narrow ruling to which each now of these platforms will have to adhere and create new guidelines for their algorithms if they're even able to use them at all. So it's very hard to say what the outcome will be, but that's a possibility.
Absolutely. Let me go to the crew because folks are checking in. Lana, you co-posted and kicking us off this afternoon. My sister, you said we must stop expecting these platforms to tell us what we can or cannot say. Think about it. The only views muted are Black voices. Not really. It's not just we're certainly muted, but just muted in terms of popular culture. I think there's a lot of push against those who stand against quote unquote popular culture. You don't get a lot of play, but Black voices definitely. If the voices are coming across too strong, you're going to see something that. So I agree with you there. Go ahead.
If I may, Farajii, this is why we have such a disparity on who goes viral. And this will go to some of the topics we're going to talk about later on in the show. They can pick and choose. Some who have been on the inside of these companies have said there are literal buttons that they can choose which content creators go viral. So what we get in terms of their curation of our news is what you just brought up, the January 6th disparity of the two or many Americas that we live in. The news feed that you were given, Farajii, that I am given, that the guy in the middle of the country is given, are all different. They're all tailored to what your algorithm thinks you want to know or want to know more about. So we are not in a world where everyone is dealing with the same set of facts, which is a huge problem. The divisions of our country are really kind of originating from this algorithm. So even if it's less Black voices here or there, it's actually only voices that you want to hear and that they think you should hear, which is, I think, is a real dangerous premises around why we are not as unified as a country and why they should be regulated to some degree or another.
Absolutely. Karen, you said if Section 230 is amended, holding social media platforms liable, they would be required to carry general liability insurance to ensure losses resulting from bodily injury, personal injury, or death. Karen has been working in the insurance industry for years. So that is another part of the conversation that we really need to have. Like, if somebody is harmed or someone is killed as a result of some type of wording or exchange on social media, now you got to get into that space of having some level of general liability insurance. And that can cost from millions of dollars just for an individual. So it's billions of dollars for companies.
I was about to open up a new office in a new area of practice because think about it. Everybody has curated their type of, desired material according to the algorithm every single day. So it's not just about like something that you read. You are constantly being fed. In the case of the Gonzaleses, the Al Qaeda information, what is going on, how terrible, things are in Paris, and, all about jihad as they think of it, and all those things constantly, it's radicalizing them, right? If they sat at their home without internet, they would not have access to this. So they're saying there should be some degree of culpability, whether they're going to rule in that favor, and therefore they'll have to be insured, et cetera, et cetera. I just don't, it's about to be crazy in terms of the legal practice, because there are a lot of people that have been harmed, as we could possibly argue, due to what the social media companies are allowing the algorithms to control.
Absolutely. Get one final comment here. This is from my sister, Janelle, who makes a great point. She said, people take license, Suzette, with free speech, forgetting that constitutional protections only applies to situations where the federal government tries to restrict what you communicate. Private businesses need to watch out. So then there's going to be advocates on the other side that says, is this going to be the beginning of the end for private businesses and how they communicate with their stakeholders, or private businesses that communicate with their customers? And I don't think it will open that door. I mean, I'm sure people are going to try to make the connection, but I don't see that. It would be hard for me to believe that people don't see that what people say on social media doesn't affect us here in the real world. Mm-hmm. When we get news from social media,
everything, Amazon recommends stuff to you. Everything recommends something to you. Absolutely,
like So it's for me, it's like social media has become this pseudo quasi communication entity.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's not the news, because we know that you can spew a lot of lies on the platforms, but at the same time, it does give you a sense of what the pulse of the people are. If you want to know what's going on, go on social media. That's why Twitter, it gives you the option to see what's trending. They have a section, I read it every day. They have a section that says for you, and then they have a section that says national, or they might have a section that says, sports, but it gives you the option. And I think that speaks volumes, because guess what? They are tracking what people are talking about based upon your specific preferences versus what they are talking about in general. So it opens up a huge, huge door. Suzette, we got 30 seconds.
Okay, but that means they have to bear more responsibility, because remember, what they are producing for Farajii out in LA is not the same as the guy sitting in his living room, in Baltimore or in Maine or wherever it is across this world. So if they're allowed to create, in essence, many small little internets in different types of source material, depending on, again, your preferences of what the algorithm is telling you, they therefore, bear that responsibility. I will also say there are two laws, one out of Texas, one here in Florida, that are at the state level trying to challenge the internet companies or the social media companies' ability to regulate political speech. They want to make it more free because they think that any type of regulation would, in fact, harm their political positions. But the Supreme Court would trump any of these laws if this were to pass in favor of the plaintiff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We got to keep our eyes on this. And folks, trust and believe we're going to do our due diligence to keep you posted as well. All right, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talking about healing from trauma. We're going to be checking in with life coach Ayanna McNeil to get the latest about how we can move forward when traumatic events happen in our lives. Stay with us. That conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to the show. It's time for us to have a different conversation about trauma, and this is the subject of our next segment as we check in with life coach Ayanna McNeil to give us some insight on how we can handle when traumatic events, tragic events, life-changing events take place in our lives, and what we can do to be recovered and restored from it. Now, this comes out of a space just taking a look at where we are in our culture. And I want to bring my Suzette back into the conversation because I look at Suzette's show, and Suzette, they often talk about, y'all on your show, Suzette, you often talk about like when life-changing events, when you're talking about, changing jobs, and or when you're talking about, relationships, the relationship status change, life-changing events, and there is so much that's attached to those changes. And guess what? I'm of the thinking now, I can't handle it. You might need to just, you know what I'm saying? Like some things might, it's like when we honest with ourselves, like, you know what? I'm not as strong as I could be.
It's a lot. We shoulder a lot in our society. We do.
So I wanted to have this conversation. So I'm so excited to talk to my sister, Ayanna McNeil. Let's bring Ayanna into the frame. Ayanna, she is a certified life coach, and she's going to give us some insight on how we can move forward. More importantly, how we can recover and heal from trauma in our lives, especially, of course, when you're Black.
Yes.
When you're Black. Ayanna, good afternoon. How you doing, sis?
Good afternoon. How are you? Nice to be with both of you. Thank you for having me. Can y'all hear me clearly?
Yeah, we can hear you well.
Perfect.
Let's start with the work that you do. First and foremost, Ayanna, you are a certified life coach. You are an author. You're a motivational speaker. You help people to get through trauma. How would you describe the work that you do?
Yes, I do. I'm based out in Brooklyn. I work for Transformation Counseling Services, and I work directly with individuals and couples to deal with adverse events in their life, stress in their life, interpersonal issues in their life, and really find balance, develop skills to deal with and cope with when life happens, because life be life and for us all. I tell my clients that all the time. We all have experienced traumatic events. We all have our background where we have gone through something that's traumatic, and it's okay not to be okay. It's not okay not to get help when you're not okay. That's what I remind my clients.
That's facts. All right, now there are a couple of things, and Suzette, definitely join us. I want you to jump in for this because I think we need to have a round table because you talk about this so much. So
a lot.
You had to keep your mind on this. But Ayana, I want us to kind of break it down. There are two words that I want you to help us with.
Okay.
The first word is trauma. Mm-hmm. Folks often use the word trauma. If we have a bad day, it's trauma. If we can't find, and I'm not even trying to trivialize it, but I've heard it used in this context that, you can't find the closest parking spot to the mall. You're like, this is traumatic. You know what I mean? Like it gets to be used kind of like haphazardly. So what is the way that you would define trauma?
Well, trauma is defined in the dictionary as a distressing, stressful event. And so that's very general. And it might be traumatic for somebody not to find that closest parking spot next to the mall. We can't define for someone else what trauma is for them, but the actual literal definition of trauma is a distressing, stressful, frightening event. And so that looks different for anyone. The way I describe trauma, and it's so appropriate for right now because I'm actually sitting in the rain, it's pouring here in New York. I describe it as rain. And I say, when you go outside in the rain, you're bound to get wet. So trauma is the rain. It will fall on everyone in different ways. It might be light, it might be heavy, it might be a downpour, it might be a sprinkle. We will all experience trauma very differently. And the things that we shield ourselves from the rain are different tools, different support systems, such as therapy, such as coping skills, such as supportive network of people you love and trust. Those are our umbrellas, our raincoats, and our rain boots that shield us from being drenched in the rain. But trauma is like rain. It will fall on everyone at some point.
Trauma is like rain. Suzette, what's your take?
She ain't never lied. Well, sis, Miss Ayana, you're doing God's work. I initially came on YouTube with that in mind, and people told me it's too much to talk about women's trauma all day on YouTube. But I've had live events around this because I realize a lot of our sisters are not healed. We are not able to show up present and in our fullness because we're still dealing with the scar tissue. What commonly do you see when you talk to someone as a life coach is some of the sources, as we're talking about trauma, that people leave kind of undealt with when they're approaching their job, when they're approaching romantic relationships, when they're approaching life, and that it hinders them from living and expressing themselves fully and enjoying this journey of life fully? Where do you see some of those sources of trauma?
That's a good question, Suzette. And thank you for creating those spaces and continue to do so because it's so necessary. Just to reduce the stigma of you can talk about emotion, you could talk about what you're struggling with, and there are people who understand and support you. What we typically see is people who are really struggling with conditionings deeply rooted in our childhood, deeply rooted in our interpersonal relationships from growing up. Some people may have experienced abuse or neglect or harm, and they learn conditioning that tells them, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve, I'm not worthy enough, I don't have enough. So people come from a place of scarcity if they had to struggle growing up. So I really work with each of my clients to explore their conditionings. I call it our BS. And BS standing for belief systems. Explore your belief systems. Ask yourself, why do I believe what I believe about myself? Because it is always rooted in conditioning. And so we go all the way back. We go back to, the first time you equated getting praise with your worthiness, because now you're a people pleaser. In your 30s, you want to please people because when you were a child, the only time you got attention was when you were doing something that was worthy to be praised. So we go all the way back, but it really is, we are all deeply entangled in our conditionings.
So let me ask you, how do you make sure that as you kind of go take that journey back, Ayana, that you don't like totally uproot all the stuff that a person believes in to the point where now they don't have any idea about who they are and what they want, and they get into this mode of just completely, being totally redefined? Because I don't have a problem with going back to take a look at, where things have gotten started. But I think the confusing part becomes like now you be redefined yourself to be this whole other person, and your family doesn't recognize you, your friends don't recognize you. Like, well, I'm just me, and be like, well, you was that wasn't you just a couple of weeks ago. So you know what I mean? Like, because I know that there could be potential consequences when you open people up that way, that they start to question every single thing that has gone on in their life. They start to look at the people closest to them as the enemy in some cases. So how do you make sure that there's that proper balance there?
That's a great question. So for me, exploration doesn't necessarily mean that you disregard. Because it's a conditioning, it doesn't mean that it's completely harmful. A lot of the things that we're conditioned to do actually help us survive, actually help us connect and grow. I remind each of my clients that I work with that you're an expert of self. So you have to assess in your mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional bodies if this is the best version of me. Do I feel my best when I operate like this? Am I operating in my power? Am I operating from a space of lack, or am I operating from a space of wholeness and freedom and fullness? And that's the introspection that I want people to look at in their conditionings. If their conditionings serve them, continue. If it serves you well, if it made you who you are, I don't want you to disregard that, because that's who you are. But I do want you to understand that there's an iceberg here. So you might be looking at the tip of the iceberg, the issue, the presenting issue, but under that waterline is a whole lifetime of things that you learned, of things that you received, of things that you were told, of things that you told yourself. Yeah. And I want you to explore it. It doesn't mean that you have to now wake up a new person. You are who you are. Your belief systems made you who you are. So you can't disregard that. Your family, your upbringing, all of the things that make you who you are a part of your journey. But if they hinder you and they stop you and they deplete you, it's okay to explore it and shift.
It is okay. Let me, Suzanne. I'm going to fair. I feel like I'm just about to lay down on the bench right here.
Listen, she doing work here. She doing work. Let's go. Somebody gonna get healed.
Somebody gonna be healed. My sister Queen Chia Soto, you checked in. You said nice breakdown. Talking to you, Ayana, saying nice breakdown of trauma. She said she works in a trauma-informed community, and this is so very helpful. I thank you all. Queen Chia, thank you so much for checking in and tuning in. I'm glad that you found that to be helpful. My sister Shalinda checked in and says, we have trauma in our DNA as melanated people.
Absolutely.
That's true. That's true. Here's the thing about this, and we got to take a quick pause, but Shalinda, I appreciate you for bringing that up, because I already know I'm Black. I already know what the challenges are in America as being a Black man and all of that. I already get that. I'm trying to heal from this trauma, though. I don't need to heal from the world not accepting my Blackness. I'm trying to heal from the trauma of the world and not accepting my Blackness, right? Like I feel like those are two different things. And when we come forward, Ayana, I would love to get your take on that, because, I know people say because we Black. I get all that. But just even though we're Black, we still do have other trauma outside of our Blackness.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Farajii, going
like,
deep.
so
Absolutely. Yeah.
How do we get to that part? I know I'm black. I got you. I hear you. I synced it. But how do we get to healing from the childhood stuff? How do we get to healing from feeling rejected in a relationship? How that's the stuff I want to talk about. So we're going to continue the conversation on the other side, folks, with Ayanna McNeil, who is a certified life coach, my sister Suzette, and of course with you. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking to certified life coach Ayanna McNeil, who is an author, motivational speaker, talking about healing from trauma. And I'm also joined by my sister and my friend, Sister Suzette Speaks, who is a TV host and attorney, as we talk about this issue of recovering from trauma. And Suzette, such an important conversation that we're having here. And I'm so grateful to my sister Ayanna for doing the big work of trying to heal people. But I want to get back to that point that I was making, Ayanna and Suzette, which is, okay, we understand. Shalinda said, look, we have trauma in our DNA as melanated people. Facts. I get that. But is there a way that we can look beyond our blackness to get to the other traumatic things? I get it. We have systemic racism and all that stuff. But what about when you have a failed relationship? Or what about when you go through a major change in your money situation, right? Or you lose a job, or your friendship just feels like it doesn't fit you, and how that's been traumatic. I want to get to that stuff. Can we separate the two, your blackness from the other stuff?
I'm on the page of I can't separate my blackness from anything that I do. And that's just my personal opinion. However,
I'm not saying that because I want to be somebody else. I'm saying the issues of your blackness, does that play into your failed relationship with, say, your black significant other?
No, not necessarily. We understand that we live in a society that attacks us for our blackness, and we have to navigate those systems and navigate those challenges. But that doesn't mean that all of the trauma we experience, all of the adverse experience we have is rooted in white supremacy and rooted in a system that attacks our blackness. So with that being said, there are things that you will experience. There are traumas that you will experience. There are adverse life experiences that you will experience that is not dictated on your blackness. It's not contingent on being black.
Right.
However, in a world and in society, you need spaces that affirm your blackness and keep you safe as you work on your healing journey. And so finding providers that can acknowledge you in your blackness and as a human and as a person is important. Finding someone who will, if they don't understand our language and our flavor and our style, they want to learn, they want to expand in their knowledge so that they can best serve you as the clinician or the help that they are. But finding spaces that affirm your blackness, I think, is very important in the therapeutic process.
Mm-hmm.
But it isn't contingent on getting help because you're black. Like everybody needs support. Like I said, trauma is rain. So it doesn't just fall on Black folks. It falls on everybody. Rain falls on everyone. If you walk outside right now, you're going to get wet because it's raining. So you need to find things that will shield you from being drenched in your trauma. And that is not dependent on whether or not you're Black or not.
The reason I'm bringing up, and I want to make it clear the spirit in which I'm saying this, and Suzette, I'd love to get your take on this too, is that I think sometimes we use our Blackness as a scapegoat for not doing the hard work of wanting to be better, right? Like some of us just like, no, this is the way I am. This is the way I am. But we also, it's okay to be better. You know what I'm saying? Like just because you're Black, that's beautiful. That's wonderful. But at the same time, are you a healed Black person? Are you a whole Black person, right?
Yeah.
Versus just saying, oh, I'm Black. And therefore I'm all good. And I think sometimes we kind of lean on that a little bit. And I know I'm stepping on some folks' toes, but it's just like I want us to get to a better place of healing and wholeness. And so I don't want that to be a thing where it's like, oh man, because the system and the white man and bop, 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 and all of this stuff, especially when you're looking at the male-female relationships or even within the same-sex relationships, the various dynamics of those relationships. And you can be like, as a Black man, I can be like, well, the man got his foot on my neck, therefore, that's why I'm acting a certain way. And you be like, and as the Black woman, y'all looking at us like.
Farajii, I just want to throw in there that we have to acknowledge that dysfunction is dysfunction regardless of race.
Yes.
We are not acting a certain way because we are Black. We are acting dysfunctionally. And we have to separate or learn to acknowledge that some of us grew up in circumstances where it was just dysfunctional. And sometimes we attribute it to our culture, but oftentimes there were people who raised us and people that we grew up with that also too had trauma and also grew up in dysfunction. So sometimes we need the help of people like Ayana or a psychologist, counselor, licensed family, marriage counselors, whatever we can get our hands on. And I wanted to ask Ayana about where we need to start, because oftentimes we're so busy trying to help ourselves survive, Black women and Black men helping others, that we neglect to see where we are not implementing useful, what you call it, BS, belief systems, mindsets, and dysfunction. And we're calling it, well, that's how we grew up. Well,
right.
That's what we always done.
Right.
That's what we learned from maybe mom, dad, grandma, them. But it doesn't mean it is functional, as in it's not serving you. It's not serving your family now, your kids and the next generation. So how do we learn to separate what I think, Farajii, on a kind of piggybacking on what you just said, is kind of an extension of what we're excusing as culture, and it is truly actually dysfunction.
Great point. Great point. Thank you. That's why you're the lawyer, Suzette.
You broke that down brilliantly. Dysfunction is just that. It's dysfunction, and it doesn't have a name or race to it. And so I think where we start is getting tired of the dysfunction, getting uncomfortable enough with the dysfunction to want to explore that there is something different. And that's different for every person, because there has to be a willingness to realize this doesn't work for me anymore. This doesn't feel good mentally. This doesn't feel good physically, spiritually, or emotionally for me. And it's not working. I am not at my best. And when you feel that way, asking for help, seeking help, talking to someone, reaching out to someone, we have to get past the stigma. I tell people, in the same way you would go to the pharmacy and get some medicine for a cold, it's okay to seek help when you're not feeling your best emotionally or mentally. It's still the same health. And it really is coming to a point where you kind of hit that wall of, I don't like how I feel in this dysfunction anymore. But dysfunction, like you said, it falls on everybody, and realizing that what we learned, what we were told, what we told ourselves might not be for our best selves.
Absolutely. I want to get to the other part of my other word, There was two words I mentioned. One was trauma, the second being coping. And this is something I came across in the on the website Psychology Today. At least let's post this quote, talking about what coping is and how coping is used as a way to deal with adversity. According to Psychology Today, they say the way we respond to adversity is usually referred to as coping, and it's essentially about how you deal with things happening to you. There are various types of coping strategies. One of the most studied is called cognitive reappraisal, which specifically focuses on reframing how you think about an event. This is an iterative process where we reinterpret our situation over multiple time points. Thus, the process is called cognitive reappraisal due to its ongoing and active nature. What makes some people better at cognitive reappraisal? Research has found that brain activity differs between resilient and non-resilient people exposed to the same trauma. So I wanted to kind of throw this in there as well, Ayana and Suzette, because when we're talking about reframing how we think about an event, and going back to that point that you made, Suzette, about the culture, right? Like here's a case in point. If you grew up in a neighborhood where drug dealing was frowned upon, but it was also glorified more than it was frowned upon, you might start to think that that's okay, that that's normal. Then once you grow up and then you go into somebody else's neighborhood and they say, nah, I never lived in a neighborhood like that. And look at my neighborhood and I'm there. You're exposed to a whole different culture. There's no drug dealing. There's none of this. There's none of that. Then you are either forced in that moment to do a cognitive reappraisal where you have to rethink about the events that happened before, or you can hold on to the same thing where be like, man, that y'all hood, that's crazy, man, because my hood is more lit than yours, not understanding that it's not in your best interest. I hope I'm making this point very clear. I don't want to lose folks on this. But can you speak to that, like the importance of reframing how we see things?
You want to go? You want to take us to that? You want me to go?
Listen, I preach this. Friday, she's the expert, and I just want to piggyback because I work with women as well, holding local conferences and events here in Miami. That's because that's where I was, and I don't want people to wait until they have the public breakdown, or maybe even private if you're lucky, because some people, y'all go off on y'all job, you'll do other things that kind of hints to what is being kind of being set aside on the inside until you can't take it anymore. So whether it's that aha in quiet or that aha in public, you'll know, as Ayana has talked about, when it kind of bubbles over, but we want to get it before we bring it into the relationship. We bring it into our kids, how, and with our kids and how we're rearing them, etc. What I will say is, and if you will put up this quote, please, and I see Danita Jackson, I see you, Sandy W, in the chat. You guys are talking my language when it comes to what we are attributing to Blackness and what others attribute to Blackness, which is oftentimes conflated. It's not the same thing. We have so many different components that contribute to what's going on, especially in our economically deprived communities, that we are oftentimes if it happens across the street, it's because it's dysfunction. But if it happens in our neighborhoods, it's because they're Black. No, this is why exposure is important. You wouldn't know that in your example, drug dealing was wrong if you haven't been exposed to something else. And sometimes, again, it can happen regardless of economics, right? Just because you got more money don't mean that you're necessarily. I've had people, their fathers cheated their whole life. And so they are marrying people that they are also covering for. It can manifest in many different ways. But to what Sister Ayana has said is that if you are looking at your life and you're saying to yourself, wait a minute, I am not living in truth. I am living in, as Sandy W has it over here, shame, or a sense of like trying to make up for something in the past, or that my past is really controlling what I'm doing, saying, acting, who I'm loving now. We need help. Don't wait till you're making decisions based on that trauma or living a life based on that trauma. We need to start to kind of grow in our self-awareness nice and early, teach our children about this. In that same Psychology Today article you sent, Farajii, it was talking about teaching this kind of mental health and self-awareness earlier, so that we can identify in ourselves and others. Am I coping? Am I using a terrible belief system? Am I thinking, about this situation that happened to me, in a way that is helping me, or can I reframe it to not give it that power? That's why we also have, religious institutions and other mechanisms to help us get control of our thoughts and our thoughts towards our trauma and therefore our lives. So we got to really do the work, guys.
Real quick, Ayana, what's your take?
Yes, so I want to talk about coping and then really just the two type of brains that people show up in. One, coping skills can be both healthy and unhealthy. People can cope by drinking and smoking till they numb whatever they're feeling at that moment. Or coping can be, I call a support system, or I follow my safety plan and if I feel like I am unstable or dysregulated. So coping can either be healthy or unhealthy, the way you spin it and the way you look at it. I love that both of you talked about exposure and also access. So here's the thing. People show up in two types of brains, survival brain or thriving brain. And when you're in your survival brain, you are literally trying to operate from the traumatic experience, from your traumatic lens. How do I survive? And so when you are in a world of dysfunction and you're showing up in your survival brain, you are going to do things that will give you immediate comfort. There was a poem that I used to share with teachers. I did mental health work in schools and we did trauma training for teachers. And the poem is called I Ain't Got a Pencil. And I don't know the author's name at the top of my head. But if you Google I Ain't Got a Pencil poem, you will find it. And the poem talks about my teacher was upset that I didn't come in with my homework. My teacher was upset and screaming at me that I didn't come prepared with a pencil, but I had to go through all of these things just to get to school. I had to get my baby sister up and my mother is on drugs and we didn't have any food and we didn't eat. And I made it. At least I made it to school and you screaming at me because I don't have a pencil. And we told educators when people show up, they show up as their whole selves. Yep. Everybody shows up as their whole selves. And you have to know that sometimes people are showing up in survival mode. And coping may be moment to moment, but adding healthy coping skills, adding healthy experiences, giving them exposure to something different than what they're used to will help shift their behavior. That's CBT therapy right there, cognitive behavioral therapy. So you change how you think about something and it will ultimately affect your behavior moving forward. But you have to be exposed. So exposure is important.
You have to be exposed. And that's why I brought up that piece about reframing what you're seeing, what you're going through, because somebody else might be going through something different, or they can help give you some clarity to let you know, like, that's not healthy, or that is healthy. They can help you provide some balance. Ayana, I thank you so much, sis. I got to bring you back on. There's so much more we can certainly discuss.
Yes.
But I'm so happy you were able to join me and Suzette today. So thank you so much for your time. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ayana.
Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we got some more great conversations. Let's talk about Jonathan Major's cover. Let's talk about the Rihanna cover. Black masculinity, Black femininity, and how it's being redefined. So that conversation is up next here on the Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. What a dynamic first hour that we've had here on the show. want to bring my sister Suzette Speaks, TV host and attorney, back into the frame. Man, I love having conversations about trauma, healing, and all that good stuff, Suzette.
I think it's so necessary, and I'm grateful that we have the platform here to do it.
I'm serious. I am serious. When you know, when the opportunity came up for us to talk to Ayana, I was like, I know what dab to put her on.
Wednesday.
Yes, I'm gonna put her on Wednesday. I know the day we're gonna put her on. We're gonna have a conversation. Like real talk, like, because I am really in you know, this opens up the conversation for our next discussion, but I am really in the space of looking at a lot of different things of, like, culturally, how we go about the process of relationships, you know, thinking about the relationship with self and the relationship with folks outside of ourselves. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at all of the, like she said, I love how she said it, you know, your belief system or your BS, all of that, right? Because it's getting to be so destructive. And I think we need to be more intentional about who we want to be in this thing called life, right? I think we need to be more like, okay, we don't have to kind of be we don't have to be caricatures.
Stereotypes,
right? We don't have to play into the myths and the of you know, being who we are, right? And one of the things that you know, I kind of came to an understanding of, and I would love to get your take on this, is that when we look at our culture oftentimes focuses on various parts of us. But I remember being in therapy, and my therapist told me this at the beginning of the therapy process. She said, Farajii, my job is to take your compartmentalized self and integrate you and bring it all together so you can have a whole self again.
Listen,
she said, I damn near cried. I was sitting in therapy like,
and salute to you for being an example of Black men having, you know, positive experiences and benefits from therapy. That's what
no. Look, I'm not. Look, if you're a Black man or if you're a man in general, you're a woman, I don't care. Like, therapy is excellent, man. Like, once you find your therapist, like you know how people say, I'm gonna find my person. Once you find your therapist,
yes, it works.
It's all good. Like, it's wheels to the ground. But when she told me that, Suzette, it just resonated with me. She was like, you've been working out of this kind of dysfunctional, to your point, this dysfunctional space. And I realized, looking at our culture puts so much emphasis on the various parts of you, how you look, what you drive, what you wear, where you live, right? Not taking in the full self. See, we love the parts. We put the parts of ourselves out there on social media. But when a person gets to know who you really are, and I'm not saying we're terrible people,
right?
But I'm just saying the totality of the self, then that's a whole different person.
Yeah.
In some cases.
It is amazing that we survive the way we do. But I think what Ayana said about survival mode, many of us live there. And so we don't have the luxury at times, because we do have to pay the bills and people are relying on us and we got to do what we got to do. And, you know, there's no room for error oftentimes. But it unfortunately does not allow us to live fully, and freely, which is what you're describing. But I just think every human being should want and has the birthright of that freeness, as much as we have these kind of, you know, expectations placed on us, these biases placed on us, right? Sometimes these limitations that are very real placed on us. We still have to, you know, fight for our ability to know our true selves and fully express that as much as we're capable of, especially with the people that we love. And if it isn't working, if there are broken parts of us, we have to take the time. Imagine what the Black community would look like if each of us individually tried to take the time to do that self-healing, or with the help of a therapist, which most of us will need, what we would look like. Oh my gosh, generation we would get this money and build this community and keep it moving. But we skip that step. We try to survive and build, but oftentimes there's brokenness that we're still dealing with that is very evident. So let's work on it, y'all, together.
And Suzette, I love how you said how you said we skip that step. We do. We talk about economics. We talk about social mobility. We talk about all of these other things. The key thing is before you even get into all of those other spaces, and when I have conversations publicly and privately, you got to fix yourself, man. Because no matter how, if you are broken on the inside, every achievement is going to be tainted with your broken.
As you get higher, it gets exposed.
And whew,
help us all, Lord, me included. I don't mean it as a point finger. I mean it's like I'm working on myself too. Like we all have to do that because what I wanted you to also ask her, and when she comes back, the word trigger.
Oh, whoa, that's a good one.
This is another thing. Hello, because we know what it feels like when somebody says that thing, that pain point, and it all of a sudden shift you back to when you was
right. Take you back to the streets.
We gotta flip. We gotta flip that. We gotta address that. We gotta heal that. So that when we get to these points in our jobs, again, in our relationships, right at the house is the most important relationships you will have. So when those trigger points are kind of breached in those scenarios, what you gonna do? And again, it doesn't matter what car you drive at that point. It doesn't matter what you got in the bank account at that point, because you're molding the person you live with, persons you're responsible for each and every day. So we really got to work on it together.
Absolutely. Now here's this is interesting because it speaks to what I wanted us to have a conversation about next, which is this whole controversy around the Jonathan Majors ebony cover and the Rihanna ebony cover of her, A$AP Rocky, and their son. Of course, everybody is talking about the feminizing the black male, right? As a result of some people feel like these covers add to the conversation of there's an agenda, quote unquote, to feminize the black male. I want to show you with these covers. Most of you probably have seen this, but take a look at this cover. Lisa, if we can, there we go. This is Jonathan Majors, major action star. I saw him just in Ant-Man Wasp movie this past weekend. He was in that. He's had a phenomenal year. He was in Jay-Z, the movie that Jay-Z produced, that Black Western. He's been in, of course, he's been in The Wasp. He's in Creed 3, which is coming up in a couple of days, in a couple of weeks. I mean, he's a rising star, black rising star. People are saying he's going to be like the new it guy, but he's on the cover of a black magazine with this presentation. Right. So I want to start with Jonathan Majors, and then we'll look at the Rihanna piece, right? And because there's been a lot of conversation, and I wanted to have this conversation specifically with you, Suzette, because to get us to have a
let's go. Y'all mad?
People are really upset.
Y'all mad about the cover? Let's go.
Hey, at least let's show the cover again. Ooh-wee. And look, the dude look like he about to whip your ass.
Yo, listen, first of all, Jonathan Majors is so talented. Let's start there. Not only is he physically ripped, but his body of work. He as an actor,
like how Suzette put it, not as he physically whipped, but his body, going back to his body.
We gonna call the man, he a handsome man, but we also gonna respect his work. Oh my goodness, his breath from the civil rights era pieces to now Apollo Creed's or Adonis Creed, Michael B. Jordan's movie. He's like the foil on that movie. He's done so many wonderful roles. Now Marvel is having him do an extremely significant role. I just want to start with, can I just make my intention clear? Because sometimes, Farajii, I would shy away from these. We're going to have the conversation, but these kind of conversations, because I do, for me, believe there is also an agenda, oftentimes, to separate Black men from Black women. Yeah. And I want to make the intention clear that is not why I want to discuss this today, because I feel like some of it kind of gets recycled in these big stereotypes and tropes, as opposed to taking on, individuals. And again, there's so little representation that one person means so much to us. And I get that. But I want to start by saying we hear it again and again, but we're not sure that we are, even in our community, allowing Black people not to be a monolith. Let me start there.
Fact.
Black men also, for generations now, have had to deal with the pervasive stereotypes, oftentimes negative, that are associated with Black masculinity. Angry Black man, right? Super aggressive, that he cannot show emotion. But we know, as the human beings we are, the experience as a human being oftentimes incorporates all the emotions that, both men and women can have. We can be soft at times. We can be nurturing at times. We can be upset at times, but only certain emotions are allowed within the realm of what we are calling Black masculinity. I just want to also point out, first and foremost, I do not believe there is enough coverage of the various types of Black men and Black women in existence. We see the same archetypes over and over. But as we know, and I'm just thinking about it in just what we've discussed here on this platform, Tyree Nichols was a skateboarder. We look back at other people who are blurs. I've had shows about Black nerds with a term of endearment we came up with, blurs, that love their anime. Michael B. Jordan talks about it. Love their other, all kinds of stuff. That's true. Black people love everything from, rock and roll, which we invented, to, classics. We get pigeonholed so much so that I do believe that there can often be, in a reactionary way, something that does not permit this cover for some, because some people absolutely love the cover. But some say, because of the representation disparities in terms of the amounts and the lack thereof of many types of Black male presentation, and therefore what we're describing here as Black masculinity, people get real uncomfortable because we sitting in a space where, there's a big pizza and we got this little bitty slice. How are we using the slice?
Yeah.
But I push back a little bit and say we have to make room for more than one representation of Black masculinity, because the truth is more than one exists, right? We have our scholars, and again, there's so many pieces that kind of overlay economics, right? Socioeconomics, political affiliations that kind of want to keep us in a box, but we're not. We're deep, we're wide, we're broad. And I think with this cover, it is also kind of, again, triggering what many feel is actually happening in their real life, what they think is happening. I can't find a good Black man. I can't find a Black man that looks like what my expectation is. So therefore, this is a bigger agenda. Again, there were people I spoke to that found it very artistic with his jean boots pants, and others say that it was an ode to an anime character that looks like that, with, I forget the name of the character and what film it's from. I'm not a big anime person, but that the designer or the person who kind of set him up, again, he doesn't make the decisions. They're artistic and creative.
And first, let me say again very quickly, I appreciate you saying, kind of taking that stance, because even for me, looking at the cover of this, and I was like, okay, let me think this through. One, first and foremost, nobody is, and then this is Ebony, folks. This is a Black magazine, that caters to Black readers. Let me just say it first. It used to be a Black magazine, but caters to Black readers. But when you do photo shoots, nobody is going to do a photo shoot that's not going to give the green light on certain photos to be released. Jonathan Majors said, oh, this is the photo they want to use? Fine, this is the photo that we'll use. Or yes, I like this photo, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And folks, I would encourage people to go to ebony.com. There's a little video. It's a behind the scenes video of Jonathan talking about his experience of doing this photo shoot. And even though this photo was taken and people have their views, when you look at the video, you start to understand he is comfortable in his own skin. He does not think about, he wants to push the boundaries. Now, I don't know he's a part of the LGBT.
It's supposed to be evocative. It's supposed to be evocative.
And then personally, it doesn't matter to me. But what I do think, to your point, Suzette, is that there has to be some different conversations about Black masculinity. There was a sister that wrote a piece for Forbes.com. Her name is Maya. Let's make sure I get my sister's name right. Her name is Maya Hoskin. And she wrote this piece for Forbes. She wrote this piece back in March of last year for Forbes.com that talks about Black masculinity and mental health, what Black men should consider about their emotional and mental wellness. Here's what she said when we're talking about Black masculinity. Let's put quote 1 up, please, Lise. When we're looking at this, she said, traditional media portrayals of Black men haven't helped. As a study published in 2019 in the journal Psychology of Men and Masculinity is explained, we have been inundated with images in film, television, and social media that depict Black men as overly masculine and in some cases aggressive and hypersexual. Open displays of emotion, on the other hand, are often frowned upon and not socially acceptable, sending a clear message to some Black men that to be accepted, they must fit a particular gender role in which strength and stoicism are mandatory. She also talks about this piece, and it's a great piece if you haven't checked it out. But one of the big things she's talking about is this, how of letting Black men be vulnerable, how this has played that this trope that you talked about, Suzette, has caged us and confined us and has not allow us to be vulnerable, to be in a space where we are comfortable in our own skin. Because my question was, how do we create a space for Black men to be vulnerable? How do you create a space where a Black man, he can be muscular, he can be tall, dark, and dashing and handsome and all of those things, but he still has feelings. He still has a heart. How do
people gonna be mad, Farajii, because other people will see it a different way. And I see you, Lana L, on your comment, and I agree. Listen, we gotta take a break, but it's more to say to this. There are many ways to look at this. We don't all have to agree. I respect it though, sis. Yeah.
Look, let's talk about it. And of course, we won't be able to get to all of the ins and outs of the Today Show, but it's just to open up. Like, are we doing enough to make Black masculinity a space of growth and evolution? Because what has happened from us?
Farajii, they mad.
Well, you know what? I mean, look, we and here's the thing. That's, if they're mad, that's fine, because this is part of our culture. You cannot close your eyes.
It's good.
You can't close your eyes and be like, man, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that.
Because but again, we're not a monolith, so people can see it however way.
We're still a Black man. If I saw a Black man, I see a Black man.
Exactly. We got to take a break.
All right, let's take a break. Look at Suzette, man. She like Farajii. All right, let's take a quick pause when we come forward. More conversation about Black masculinity, Black femininity, and you. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Well, I would definitely want to hear more from what our culture crew is saying.
All right, we back right here, Suzette. I'm right here. There we go. Okay. Folks, I wanted to and welcome back to the show. We've been talking about this issue of the ongoing conversation with Jonathan Majors and being his representation on the cover of Ebony magazine. Take a look at this once again, folks. This is Jonathan major movie star. He's bold, and he has taken charge. He's taken Hollywood by storm. And a lot of people have a problem about this representation we saw in Ebony. My question is, can we create a space where Black men can be vulnerable? Can we do that? can we create that space? And that is one of the big questions. And that's why this is important for us to have this conversation from a cultural perspective. Suzette, let's bring you back into the frame here. Because I know that there has been a lot of discussion about, okay, that this is not the way Black men should be and everything. But I'm even pushing back on how we are right now, right? Because every Black man is not hypersexual. We're not all aggressive. We're not all beating our chest, right? Like there are different levels of expression of our masculinity, right? You know, some people will say, Farajii, you have an A personality type, but when you meet me, I'm not that kind of guy to, you know, walk into a room, what's good, you know, I need you to bow down to my greatness and all of this stuff. Like, I just don't carry that energy. You know what I mean? But it's just the fact of we have to be comfortable. And I'm saying whether it's from our cultural perspective or as a community of people, we have to be comfortable with the evolution and the spectrum of Black male masculinity and how it's expressed.
See, I couldn't agree with you more. And like I said, Black men come in all different, you know, shapes, sizes, walks of life, and there should be room for all of them. I'm going to offer, and again, chat, you will let me know what you think, because there is an elephant in the room, not my necessarily opinion, but some may argue that there is a sense of some members of our community that feel as if there are media attempts to feminize Black men. I'm not saying I agree with that, but I want to throw out the other side of the spectrum on this, that think that there has been more promotion and I guess in a broad sense over the last maybe 5 years in society of LGBTQ Black men who are non-traditional in a sense, and there being some sort of connection to that with some kind of bigger agenda to remove traditional, I guess the term would probably be cisgender or heteronormative Black men from being the forefront of our community. So I know there are people who are afraid that that is happening. I'm not necessarily one who believes that line of thinking, but I know in conversations about this, that has come up where people will say, again, because we don't have that many big covers, and when we're in front of a magazine, it's not just us, it's everyone seeing it, that the implications here are not, again, how I may interpret it as an individual piece of art and looking at it from a, this is his expression or the creative director's vision, but there is a fear that there is deeper messaging or covert messaging that is trying to impact traditional Black masculinity.
I recognize that. Yeah, I recognize that. But guess what? I mean, you're going to be, if you are secure, right? If you are rooted in your understanding of manhood and masculinity, and I'm talking to the men out that watch us, right? If you're rooted, you're not going to be upset to the point where you're like, oh my gosh, like this is look, let me just tell you, first and foremost, I don't know if the brother is a part of the LGBTQ community. That doesn't matter to me. It's not my business, right?
Married, but yeah, anyway.
No, it doesn't matter. So if he puts himself out there as, and if he's not a part of it, or if he is if he's an ally of the community, whatever the case may be, or he simply just wants to show what we've seen, like some of our crew members are saying, from the 70s, where Black men wore the high top heels and the big furs and all of that stuff. If that's level of that's the energy that he's on, that's a part of our history. Right. That's a part of our story, right?
I think it's wonderful.
And I'm not gonna knock him for expressing himself. I think the problem is we take the outward expression as being the only expression. That's the problem. And we're just saying, oh, well, he got his lips ducked, and I get it. It's like you just
not the duck lips, not the
duck lips, right? This big burly brother, rocking duck lips. But if he was rocking duck lips with his daughter in a selfie on Instagram, him and his daughter taking a little selfie, would you be like, oh well, the context and with it? I mean, it's getting to the point where you just got to say, well, when can a Black man be a Black man? Or when can he be vulnerable to express the different facets of who he is? Like, there are different facets of me. There are different facets of brothers that I know. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of brothers, we have a feminine side and we have a masculine side. That's just by nature.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, what are we trying to do? Are we trying, again, this is what our culture often does. We compartmentalize nature. We compartmentalize our natural selves and then make it unnatural.
Mm.
And so it's like, how do we need to create a space for all of these pieces to integrate and to work in concert with one another. And it's very interesting to see how this thing plays out. All right, let me get to some of the crew because folks are chomping at the bit on this.
Salute to the chat.
JJ, you said, let's be honest, black men are labeled sassy for anything that's outside of the norm. The average black man knows the only men that would be praised for wearing this without question would have to be a celebrity. Facts. I mean, a lot of celebrity brothers wear some wild stuff. You know, they wear
Winston Duke in a skirt. He was looking good though, but they put him in like a kilt or something like this. Yeah.
Hey, look, how many years did it take, Suzette, for people to realize that Prince will whip your ass?
Did not play with his boot, with his little kid.
He will outscore you on a basketball court.
And tell you about yourself. Yeah, no, it's again, people are different. And we are so, again, sensitive to attacks on masculinity that we are sometimes, although maybe unintentionally limiting brothers from being able to express different sides of themselves. And immediately attacking it is going to make sure that they don't. And I don't know if that's a good thing. Is where I would kind of
I hear you. Let's go back to the crew. Karen Coffee Colton. Karen, you bring up an excellent point. You say if you look at the pics in the 70s, black men were wearing shoes with heels, crop top tees, and capes, and were considered masculine. That was the culture. That was the style back then. Absolutely. Yes. I went to the museum in Baltimore, the Reginald F. Lewis Museum. They had an exhibition where they looked at the different fashion styles of black men in particular. And there was a time in the early 1900s where black men would wear these very loud, vibrant colors. And guess what they would call themselves, Suzette? What? Dandelions.
Dandies, yes. I'm a Yankee Doodle dandy. That's what
dandies. Y'all take a look at the history. And these were brothers that wore very now they didn't put makeup on, but they wore very clothes that
they were well kept men. I know well
kept, and they were dandies.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So when I think about the fashion side of it, you know what I mean? And these were black men. They came from the streets, but they expressed themselves in a very, very specific way. So Karen, you are absolutely right. Thank you for checking in. Real Brooklyn, my guy, you said simply put, dude is comfortable getting that paycheck to wear that Dennis Rodman robe.
Shout out to Keeping It Real, Brooklyn.
Dennis Rodman, he's not even and Dennis Rodman will say he's very comfortable in his skin. Yeah, and I think this is something, right? Like even as I grow, and this might be the wrong view, but when I look at a person like a Dennis Rodman and all that he went through and how he expresses himself, there's an authenticity there that I can appreciate from a Dennis Rodman, right? There's something there that you could be like, he's authentically being Dennis Rodman. Mm-hmm. And I think that for black men, that's the place that we want to go. We want us to not be caricatures or stereotypes. We want us to be who we are.
Yeah.
We want us to be who we are. Real Brooklyn, I appreciate you. Willie, you said, I'm not going to lie, Farajii, when I first saw the Riri photo, I felt like it feminized Rocky. But when I saw that Jason Whitlock felt the same, I changed my mind. It's a great thing.
Y'all so funny.
You don't want to have the same view as Jason Whitlock. I feel you.
That's hilarious.
We're going to talk about that in a few moments. My guy, Willie, thank you. Conscious Thoughts, you say, here is the question. Who controls the images and projections of how we are viewed and how we view ourselves? Well, it's a twofold. Traditionally, it has been white media, right? It has been that narrative. But I think more and more of us, we're pushing forward. And again, for Jonathan Majors to put on a piece like this, right? We have to ask, well, who picked that photo? He he didn't pick. I'm sure he picked it. I'm sure he was a part of that decision-making process. They didn't say, hey, Jonathan, you better put this photo. Because they're actually, when you go through the article, he has other photos. He has a photo of him in boxers with the.
Y'all got that one with the flowers with the roses.
At least we got to pull up that one when you get a chance. See if you can find that. Look at that. Look at that. At least maybe hold off because
Happy Valentine's. That was when he was with them boxers. Just saying that was another beautiful piece of art. But this is doing what it's designed to do, though, Farajii.
Smart conversation.
It's beautiful that it's invoking this type of conversation. Yeah. So we have to be again very mindful that while there are forces that may want to stifle how we think of ourselves, I think the goal is to allow people to be fully expressed, whichever way that looks like. And that's not necessarily to say everybody is a part of necessarily the queer community or anything like this. But I do think we have to, whatever range, even if you're talking about a cisgender heteronormative man, he's going to have a range of how he presents himself, right? So it is it is definitely an envelope pushing cover for Ebony. I think, again, some people were in love with it. Other people are like, nah, look at this agenda. So,
but see, here's my only thing. And I mean, this might just because we are on this space, right? This platform. Are there men that are in the community, that are in our community? And even though the article says, Jonathan, he says in this article that he is not gay. He's not a part of the LGBT.
No, I don't think he is. I don't think
he said it's not a gay. So please, thank you. But are there gay men in the Black community?
100%. And if you think about the roles he's played, they have been hyper masculine. So in his representation in his art, he has shown the kind of broader spectrum of what Black masculinity can be.
And
this is just one.
That's a great point. And that could be part of the reason why he decided to do the shoot the way he is, because he's been showing these hyper masculine roles. Super hyper masculine. Like when we watch Creed, which I'm going to watch.
I can't wait.
I can't wait either. When we see Creed and we see him busting up, well, we know why you can't wait.
We pull up on the block. He'd be like, hey, you remember me? You remember me? Again, but we're used to that type of interplay. We're not used to this. So, yeah.
Right. And so I think but I'm going to get back to, are there gay men in the community? Yes, 100%. There is.
100%.
You see what I'm saying? And can we keep rejecting people because of how they want to express themselves? I mean, you can, but at the end of the day, what good is that going to do? What good is that? How does that bring us closer together? And I'm talking about in a very, very fundamental way, right? Because you're still a Black man. You're still suffering the same level of oppression and tyranny that I'm suffering from. You're still going through that whole thing. So why can't we just look at a person? And I get it. Because we say, but there are elements of our cisgender heteronormative behavior that might offend somebody else.
Yeah.
How many people say that they're Christian or they're religious, Muslim, when the case may be, but then their actions, you'd be like, damn, bro. I'm like, damn, sis, you know
Jesus? It's really kind of the trend now. I think we have to, for me, I can't speak for anybody else, are we about making space for everyone, or is it a protective, Black men are under attack, anything that's outside of this norm, we don't want it? I don't know if that's the majority of the community. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Like I said, we had many people, again, that fell in love with this cover, others that were just disgusted and upset with it. But again, it did what art is beautiful, what art can do, which is to make people really think and spark these conversations. So I think we as a community definitely have to kind of dig a little deeper and talk to people who feel different ways about this, and maybe we'll learn from one another.
Absolutely. Lana, you checked in and said, I'm sorry, I'm judging, but you can be alpha and artistic and not duck lips and thigh high boobs.
It's jean boots. The boots go all the way up the jean. He got to put them on.
I get it. Trust and believe. I get it. I
love it. I thought,
look, you know what I'm saying? Like on this platform, I get it. We can kind of express ourselves as long as we respectful. But I think underneath all of this is a certain level of fear, right? And when we come forward from the break, I'm going to talk about this fear, and I want to get your take on this, Suzette, because we're operating out of fear instead of operating out of a space of love, right, with each other. And if there is a problem about Black masculinity, we all know where it stems from. It stems from our experience with the transatlantic slave trade, being in chattel slavery, breaking us down, right? But more importantly, it now requires us to take ownership of the things that we are responsible for and have done to each other. So we can't talk about Black men need to be a certain way until Black men actually decide to step up in some way, right? Like if you're going to talk about how much of a man you are, then do what men do. Don't walk out on your family. If that doesn't work out, still be there for your children. If you're going to talk about what means being a man, then do something in your community. Don't just sit on the sideline when you see injustice. Like, do what men's supposed to do. If a man is supposed to guide, to protect, a man is supposed to provide, then do that. Then there won't be no conversation about masculine and being a man. But the reason we're having these conversations is because Black men, unfortunately, we have been broken. So we've been taken away from doing the natural thing. We're being lambasted for the unnatural expression. But how do we get out of that? Get back to the natural self. And I feel like that's the other part of this conversation. Susanna,
we gotta take a break. We gotta take a break. We gotta take
a break. Look, when we come forward, let's talk about Rihanna and A$AP Rocky. We're gonna show you that one as well and have a conversation. Stay with us. A lot to talk about here on the culture on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking to my sister Suzette Speaks, talking about redefining Black masculinity and femininity. And I want to bring my sister Suzette back into the frame. Let's look at this other part of it, which is the case with our sister Rihanna. Rihanna and her boyfriend A$AP Rocky, they just had a baby last year. Now she's on to baby number 2.
Congrats, Riri.
Congratulations. But take a look. This is the cover that everybody is talking about on this one. Now, I chose to put this one out there because, as you can see, this is not there. People have been sharing this.
Who had the time to make that? Who had the time?
She is the leader, strong. Now, I wanted to do it because I wanted to show how this came across. People saw this. Strong, dominant, masculine woman. She is the leader. He is the follower. Cockshame, submissive, nurturing, feminine man. Here's my pushback on this. And you say, who thought about that? That's one question. Like, hey, who took the time to do this?
Took effort.
Right? Craziness. But here's my thing, though. Here's my thing. I'm going to look at this. If men, this is to the point that I was making before the pause. If men stepped up, or rather, since we find that some Black men don't step up, some, not all, we're present, should Black women step down from taking the lead?
You want me to answer? Should Black men step down? So let me kind of preface
Black
this.
women step down from taking the lead if you see that a Black man is not stepping up.
Okay, and in the spirit of love and unity, I'm going to start by saying there are many, and I was trying to find when you sent today's topics, like different studies and statistics to kind of go through this. And at first, I would like to state that the majority of Black men handle their business when it comes to their kids, much more than other racial counterparts. So we want to make sure we're clear on that I believe that I found that 60% of Black fathers live with their kids, right? So they might be in a cohabitation, et cetera, but they live with their kids. And studies have also shown that Black men who are fathers go above and beyond other races when it comes to taking care of their business. So we're going to put that out there first and foremost. Now, when I look at the dynamics between Black men and Black women, and again, my only intent is to see us kind of come together and not arguing about who is to blame. But when we look at what is going on and the dynamics that kind of led to this discussion, I think there are so many layers when it comes to what is structural in our society that impedes us from finding one another. So what do I mean by that? I'm saying when it comes to things like education opportunities, when it comes to work and income opportunities, I was looking up how much the average Black man in Florida makes. Again, I hadn't had time to kind of cross-check my references, but as a ballpark, it was $37,000. So when I thought about what it costs to live in Miami, exactly, when we talk about, again, income parity, right, which again goes back to education, which goes back to looking at the Black man being overrepresented. If you do not have the educational opportunities, work opportunities, then we're looking at why we are overrepresented in criminal justice, et cetera, et cetera. There's no real one answer. That's why I want to be careful not to kind of set us, upon one another to say, step up. I'm looking at it again. There are structural conditions within society as a whole. Prior to the 70s, we were looking at high rates of marriage compared to our counterparts, right? I want to dispel the myth that culturally, we are not necessarily pro-marriage. We were or have been, right? Yeah. Until recently when we started looking probably to the end of the 70s, right? We're looking at the drug war, and we're looking at how drugs were infiltrating our communities because we had no plane to fly them in on, but came here to the United States, particularly to economically deprived areas. And when I think about what the end result has been for all these contributing factors, it leads to when women are having, these conversations amongst themselves about how do I find who I deem to be of parity, right? So when we're looking to bring it back to Rihanna's picture, right? So there's this underlying kind of conversation happening between us that we know about. And again, when we see the photo, not to say people necessarily can't have an opinion without feeling a triggering experience looking at it, but for both men, and I can't speak for men, but how they will feel they are not, in a sense, regarded in our community or regarded by society as a whole. They're not rated, the way they should be or respected the way they should be. The conversation then starts to emerge. Well, look at this as a symbol of where we are with our women. And I think that's a dangerous thing to do, to let one picture kind of start to continue to promote what many are feeling or which on paper may not actually be true. I don't know if that's clear on that last part. So
no, I get you.
37% of Black women have never been married, right?
And look,
the majority of Black men have never been fathers either.
Right.
It's a small group having most of our kids.
And
right? So there's a lot of misnomers. Sorry, go ahead, Farajii.
No, I was just going to say, you said 37% of Black women never been married. 70% of Black women hit the household in the Black community. 70%. This is nothing to do with. This is not like hearsay. This is fact.
No, when it comes to children, the majority of children are born into households led by
their mothers.
Absolutely.
Or by a mother figure, aunt, grandmom, that type of figure, right? Could be a close friend of the family, but they're reared by women. 70% of those households, of our households in the Black community. That speaks volumes. Right? So I think that to that point, yes, you're absolutely right. But there's this thing that as if, and I didn't see this. I didn't see Rihanna saying, "Oh, I'm better than him." I see a man who's letting his wife or he's letting his significant other shine. That's what I saw.
Farajii, the article was about Rihanna, and this was in British Vogue, guys, that, she just came off of having a baby, going back to work in a major way at the NFL, Super Bowl halftime show. She hadn't performed in as many years. This was an article about her. And again, going back to our prior conversation about Black masculinity, people took issue with the man not being in the front and holding the baby. What is wrong with a Black man showing affection and love? I think there's another, and this is not on this picture, but other pictures featured in the article where he's like cooing with the baby and people are upset. It's showing him cooing. What grown man who is a real dad and father to his child doesn't again experience moments where A, you have to be the nurturer, or B, you're gonna be the protector? Same thing with the woman. You have this spectrum there. People that won't date people like me, Farajii, because they say we too A-type and we want to control and we want to do all this. But
no, you know what? You know what I learned about women like that? Women that y'all and I hate to use the word submit because that has it has negative connotation.
Here we go.
No, seriously, I hate to use the word submit, so I'm not going to use that. But y'all will allow a man to take the lead if he leads with wisdom.
100%.
You see what I'm saying? Like if a man is showing that he has a brain in his head, right? He's not going to be able to think about everything. And if y'all, for all of my brothers out there that's watching this, y'all understand if y'all married and stuff, like, of course, we're not going to be able to figure everything out. But y'all, the women in your lives will be willing to follow if they have seen that you have a consistent pattern of making good decisions and that you know how to lead with wisdom.
Loyalty, trust.
You know what I'm saying? Loyalty, right? Like you ain't gonna get Suzette on the Bobo. She a lawyer. She already heard it all.
We're not playing games, Farajii. We already know what we can do. We're supposed to help one another. At the same time, it can be argued, we have some within our community that want people to pay, bills the first date, and some who want to do, again, it's a survival. Unlike, again, I'm looking for my life partner. Others are, again, looking for, we can go into deep conversations about the casual dating nature. Actually, my show on Saturday is going to be about dating broke, and what people expect on a first date. So yeah, there are multiple layers to even that part of it. But I do think sometimes, again, we get so trapped in the stereotypes that anything that we think is beyond it can make us very uncomfortable, can make us feel like there's a greater agenda. Again, it's a large platform. And again, we don't often get these large platforms. So when we do, we want, the general, our community wants the best representation possible. There are many who still believe, again, to play, devil's advocate, that it would have been better if, ASAP was in the front, Riri was in the back, Riri was lower, he was bigger. There was so much kind of read into this piece of art, this cover, that many felt, again, an agenda was being placed upon us and upon society as a whole, that the Black woman is the leader and not the Black man, and that he's.
And again, I'm going back to my point. I'm going back to my point, Suzette. We wouldn't be having this conversation if we did not see behavior from Black men that showed otherwise. If Black men, and if a brother gets mad at seeing a picture like this, be like, bro, I don't know what your personal intimate relationships look like, but you got it. Before you start jamming up on her and ASAP, have you stepped up as a man in the lives of your significant other, your children? Have you decided to show to bear that burden? Right? Because we won't be having a conversation like it's like a married man versus talking to a single man. As a single man, you can't tell me nothing, bro. You can't be like, well, see what you need to do. Hold on, bro.
I'm gonna let you address the brothers, okay? I'm gonna leave that right.
Because at the end of the day, it's about a man taking his rightful role. If a man knows who he is, or more importantly, if he understands what his role is, right? He don't need to beat on his chest. He don't need to do all of the extra stuff. He just needs to be present, focused on the role that he's supposed to play. When his significant other, if the woman is talking to him, to listen. I mean, there's so many different things to this thing. But it's rocket science.
On YouTube alone, this idea of simping and the simp culture has made it seem like something is wrong with a man who is nurturing and loving and supportive. I think that is a kind of key theme that is pervasive in this conversation. Like, there shouldn't ever be a time where in real life, I'm not talking about with celebrities, with regular people take on different roles. It's a give and a take. What works for your household is not necessarily what works for my household, and vice versa. In real lives, men can be and are nurturers, supporters at different times and stages of your life and in your relationship. It's just kind of ludicrous to think this is the only time or an instance where a man can't show that in reality, that reality of what really goes on in a relationship. Like, so much, I don't know if it's triggering. I don't know if it's, again, collective trauma, from slavery, and how we are so, sensitive. And I get that. Sensitive to not seeing Black men as heads of our community. And is it by design? I get that sensitivity. But I do think there are other messages for me, just me personally, I'm seeing in this piece of art. And again, we're not necessarily going to agree on what we're seeing,
right.
But it makes for good conversation.
Look, like my sister Lana, she said, Farajii, you being really judging today on Black men. Then she went to Tiana and said, it's just a picture. I get it. But in that case, I would have declined the feature. It's her cover. I get it. I'm judging on Black men because I'm starting to hear more and more stories from Black women on how Black men don't step up. Okay.
That's too deep for us to handle in about 2 minutes. I can't even go there.
I don't know if it's a generational thing, but that's why I'm kind of because I'm looking at the big picture. We can't have strong families, and then we can't talk about being a strong people or having a strong nation if black men continue to play the games. I'm putting that on black men. Because I know a lot of, sisters got y'all stuff, but y'all have been bearing the burden. 70% of households, let me go back to this, 70% of households are ran by women. So what does that mean? So why would I beat up on the sister that's doing the brunt of the work? No, that's not my job. That's not my role. That's why I got Suzette.
Listen, I'm definitely, again, there's so many contributing factors.
Come on, man. Come on.
There's so many contributing factors, structural, institutional.
I get it. I get all that. But see, once you get to a certain age, and as we close out, once you get to a certain age, Suzette, guess what? It's like the book say, you know what I'm saying? That once you grow up and you start to put away childish things, right? Childish ways. If you claim you a man, then be a damn man.
All right, I've got to go, y'all.
Stop all that bullshit, man. Stop all that. I'm a man. You don't take care of nobody. You don't feed nobody. You don't clothe nobody. You don't offer no woman nothing, but you claim you a man. Man, get the hell out of my damn face.
It's a lot of men doing the right thing, but we got to go, Farajii. We got to go. Thank y'all. Check me out on my channel, though. I'll see you.
Suzette Speaks. You always get me like this on Wednesday. It's your fault. Suzette, thank you.
We got to go. Love you, Farajii. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. I thank you, each and one of you. I thank my team, Lise, Joel, thank my Keenan, thank my control room. Yo, make sure y'all follow us on all social media platforms at Black Star Network. And, of course, make sure y'all continue to support us. And make sure you follow me on social media at The Real Farajii on IG and Farajii on Twitter. I love to connect with you. Stay tuned. Up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. And God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Peace.